If you're setting up TrueNAS for the first time, a few common mistakes can hurt performance, break permissions, or even put your data at risk. I've made some of these myself, so you don't have to. In this video, I'll walk through 5 beginner mistakes and show you how to avoid them or fix them before they become real problems. Before we get to that, I want to thank today's sponsor, Twingate. If you've ever tried to access your home lab remotely, you probably know the pain that it can cause. Opening ports on your router, assuming you're not in a double NAT situation, setting up dynamic DNS, messing with VPNs, and then still worrying about security. That's where Twingate comes in. Twingate lets you create a secure, private connection to your home lab without exposing it to the internet. No open ports, no complicated firewall rules. It's built for zero trust networking, which means every device and user is verified before they can access anything, which adds additional security that most VPNs don't provide. You can set it up in just a few minutes using Docker, a Linux container, or more. Recently, I was able to give secure remote access to editors to ensure they could access my Nextcloud server. After configuration, they can access Nextcloud from anywhere, and it allows me to ensure they can only access Nextcloud and not any of my other services. If you want a safer, simpler way to access your home lab remotely, check out Twingate using the link in the description. Thanks again to Twingate for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. So the first thing that we're going to take a look at is vdev layouts. So if you're new to ZFS, what you're probably going to compare a ZFS pool to is traditional RAID, so RAID 5, 6, or 10. With ZFS, it's not really like that. So what you do is you create one or multiple vdevs, and then inside of those vdevs, you determine the type of redundancy that you'd like to use. So that could be mirrored pairs, it could be RAID Z1, or it could be RAID Z2. Using this example here, what you'll see is that I have one vdev that has 8 disks, and I'm utilizing RAID Z2 for it. Now, the reason why this is important is because you have 4 things that you have to take into consideration for this. The first is redundancy, the second is performance, the third is resilvering times, and the fourth is expansion. So the first, for redundancy, this is the easiest one to talk through. RAID Z1, you can lose 1 disk. RAID Z2, you could lose 2. RAID Z3, you could lose 3. And with mirrored pairs, it's a little different. You basically can't lose the set of mirrored pairs. So with that out of the way, let's talk about performance. From a performance perspective, think about vdevs as lanes on a highway. So one vdev, you have 1 lane. If you had 2 vdevs, you'd have 2 lanes, etc. So the more vdevs that you have, the better the performance will be. So the first 2 is generally easy to think through, but the third, for resilvering, that's where things can get a little more complicated. So from a resilvering perspective, this pool here, what you'll see is I'm using all 16 terabyte drives. If one of these drives dies, I have to replace that drive. And this hits close to home for a reason we'll take a look at later. But I have to replace that drive. And when I replace that drive, it's going to be very tolling on the other drives because they have to rebuild that drive. Now, the larger your pool and the larger the drives in that pool, the higher the risk of a problem occurring with another drive when it's trying to rebuild a new drive. And that's where we go back to redundancy. But using this example here, an 8-drive RAID Z1 vdev really doesn't make a lot of sense unless it's for something like an offsite backup where you have a full local copy, but even then you're probably better off with RAID Z2, so take that into consideration. Now, the last thing to say about resilvering is that if you're using RAID Z1, Z2, or Z3 inside of your vdev, you are using parity, and for that reason, that's why it's difficult to rebuild a new drive. If these were 4 mirrored pairs, you would basically be copying one drive directly to the next. And for that reason, the resilver time is very, very simple. And you're not taxing any of the other drives the way you are with RAID Z1, Z2, or Z3 because there are not parity calculations. And then last, we will talk about expansion. Now, expansion is different than it used to be because ZFS expansion exists now. So you weren't able to expand an individual vdev in the past. With recent versions of TrueNAS, you now can. So this isn't as big of a deal as it used to be. But if you're using mirrored pairs, for example, what you would traditionally have to do is you would have to add in 2 mirrored pairs. And that's the reason why mirrors are so popular with TrueNAS and ZFS in specific. And it's because from a resilvering perspective, a redundancy perspective, an expansion perspective, it generally hits the mark for everything, as well as performance. The problem is you're losing half the available storage space. So with all of that in mind, you can probably see why this decision is so important. So if you're getting into TrueNAS and ZFS, make sure you think through your pool layout, because this is going to be the backbone of everything you do in the future. And there's a very real chance that you're going to set it up one way and you're going to go back and say, well, that is not the way I should have set it up. So take the time now. This was a quick walkthrough, but there are more in-depth videos on this. Take the time now to configure this in a way that you know will sustain you in the future. So the next thing we're going to talk about is dataset permissions. So if you come in here and you add a dataset, what you're going to see is that there is a dataset preset. Now, generic is traditional Unix permissions, SMB and apps is NFS v4 Windows style ACLs, and then multi-protocol is Unix, but then if you set ACLs, it switches back to NFS v4 Windows style ACLs, so it's a little different. This is very important because TrueNAS dataset permissions by default are confusing for a lot of people. Now, I have a complete video that goes over this, and it's kind of a beginner's guide to TrueNAS permissions. I would recommend that you watch that if you're interested in learning exactly how this works and how to manage your permissions. But from a very high level here, what ends up happening a lot of the times is people will pick the wrong dataset preset. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to set up a new data set, and I'm going to leave it as generic. Now, if I come down and I edit these permissions, you will see this Unix editor here. So people will see this and they'll say, well, I want to add a user to this data set. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to set ACLs, and I'm going to get to this point and not realize that I'm actually using POSIX. So think of POSIX as Unix ACLs. But to get to the real problem that generally occurs is people will come in here, they'll select a user, they will give that user permissions, they will save this, and then they will get an error and it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because POSIX requires a mask entry. So inside of this mask entry, the mask has to be the least or more permission than what is being granted on an individual level. So what you'll see here is we have read-write. We can set it as read-write, but technically we can set the mask as read-write execute. It just has to be at a minimum whatever you are granting, but it can be more. So after we add the mask entry, if we save this ACL, you will see that it works. Now that's different from Windows style ACLs. So Windows style ACLs are more granular, and you really want to use them for SMB shares. And that's why when you set that dataset preset that we looked at earlier, it's very important because it's going to determine the exact dataset preset that it's using for permissions. And if you get it right at that level, you're not going to have problems in the future. Now you can fix any problem that you run into, but it's kind of the easy way to ensure that you're not going to run into any problems. Again, if you're interested in seeing how all of this works, I have a video on this that I will leave a link to in the description. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is replication. And the first mistake that a lot of people make is that replication by itself is not a backup, but if it's configured properly, it is a backup. So configuring it properly is very important from a data integrity perspective. Now, there are two ways to set up ZFS replication. The first is push, the second is pull. And what I see a lot of people do is by default, they will configure push replication, which basically means that we will push the data from this NAS to another TrueNAS device. Now, push replication by itself is not inherently a problem. And if you're not using it for backup purposes, there's really no issues with using push replication. There's a lot of people that do. The problem comes in that if for whatever reason this TrueNAS device was ever compromised and you had a bunch of push replication tasks, well, they have access to those push replication tasks as well. So the way that I like to set up ZFS replication is by using pull replication. Now, pull replication is not drastically harder to set up. So the way I have this device set up is that I am currently pulling data from my primary NAS into this backup NAS. And then you'll see my data sets are all encrypted because the data can stay encrypted at rest. We are only pulling snapshots. So this is my backup strategy. I actually have two of these configured, one offsite, one onsite, and I just pull the data. It stays encrypted at rest. Now the primary NAS here, technically, if you were to go through the logs, it would know that ZFS replication is occurring. But in the replication task itself, there is nothing there. If you go into credentials and backup credentials, there is no SSH information there as well. So what happens is on the backup NASs are SSHing into my primary NAS and pulling the data. In my opinion, this is a much better way of doing it if you're doing it for backup purposes. It's not drastically harder. The hardest thing, if it's not local, is being able to SSH into your local device. And the video that I have goes over the way that I am currently doing it, but there are many ways that you can do it. But I would recommend if you're using replication and you can use pull replication instead of push replication, you should at least consider it based on your requirements. So the next is around snapshots and in specific snapshot retention. So what I did is I set up a test snapshot task here, and what you will see is that I basically have it running every single minute so that we get some data. And I have the snapshot lifetime for 4 weeks. Now, this isn't something I would traditionally do, but we're just going to show this. So once that task runs, if we go to the data set and then we view the snapshots, if I expand this snapshot, you will see that the retention policy shows that it will automatically be destroyed at this specific date and time. So what happens is, let's say I came in here and I didn't want it to run every minute. I want to change that schedule. I'm just going to do hourly, and I'm going to save that. If we go back to that data set and that snapshot, you'll see that those snapshots that ran will no longer be destroyed automatically. So what we did is we changed the frequency. We didn't change the retention policy. You would think that these snapshots would automatically delete, but they don't. So what ends up happening is that you can go in and have a bunch of snapshots, change the frequency, think that they will be deleted automatically, and they won't, and they will just sit there until you do something with them. So this is really just something that you should look out for. The only thing I have to mention here is that if you're using replication and you view the snapshots of those replicated data sets, they will all say that they will not be destroyed automatically. The reason is because the replication task will be destroying those snapshots. So this is only for snapshots that you are taking locally. Now, the last thing that we're going to take a look at is S.M.A.R.T tests. Now, S.M.A.R.T tests were always built into the GUI of TrueNAS, but with 2510, which is GoldEye, they are no longer part of the GUI. So if you come into the storage here, you'll see that there's nowhere that you can set anything to run. Now, if you had them configured and you go into the advanced settings, you'll see that they were automatically migrated to be cron jobs. And it's basically just running a command. I'll leave these in the description in case you want to set these up yourself. But you have to ensure that S.M.A.R.T tests are being run. Now, unfortunately, again, there's not a way to view that S.M.A.R.T data in the TrueNAS GUI. You can do it through the command line, but there is an app that exists called Scrutiny that you can configure. You can basically just use the default settings. And if you wanted to, you can mount the volumes to be to a local data set. I didn't do that. I just set it up by default. But as soon as you configure this, if you go to the web UI, you'll be brought to this fancy dashboard. It looks very nice. But as I said earlier, you will see that one of my drives failed and I have to replace it. So this will show all of the S.M.A.R.T data for all of your disks. You just have to make sure the S.M.A.R.T tests are running with that cron job. Now, this goes back to the first portion of this video, which is your vdev layout. And that's why getting this correct is very important. Because if I was using RAID Z1, for example, I would be pretty stressed out at this point. Even though I have backups, I'd be pretty stressed out because if for whatever reason one of those drives died while the pool was rebuilding, I would lose everything. But with RAID Z2, I have another good drive here that can die without losing any of my data. So this is a way to round out and say, again, make sure you get your vdev layouts proper because this can save you in the long run. Now, I know this was a lot, so if you have any questions, please feel free to leave those in the comments. And I know that there are probably items that you are thinking of right now that I left out, so I'd love to hear those in the comments as well. But if you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.